Hello, church. It's great to see you again. My name is Stacy Orr, and I coordinate the women's events here at Heights Church. Have you ever tried to transform yourself into something that you were not? When I was entering into my junior year of high school, I decided that I wanted to become an A student. You see, I was moving to a new school in a new town, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity to reinvent myself. I wanted to become smart because in my experience, smart people were well liked. So I entered into the new school and proceeded to act the part and eventually became an A student. This type of transformation attitude followed me into my college career, where I decided that I wanted to be a clean person. I lived in a fairly messy house, and my room was no exception. And while I could handle my own mess, I didn't necessarily want to live in the messiness of another person. So on my college dorm application, I indicated that I was a neat freak. Okay, I probably didn't use the term neat freak, but when they asked the question, "How clean are you?" I said, "Very." Once again, I entered into the college world and I acted the part and eventually became a tidy person. Today, some might actually even call me a neat freak. In these instances of transformation, I relied on my own power to change my habits. In both of these examples, however, these people that I came in contact with didn't actually see the transformation occur. They only knew me as a student or a tidy person. As you might surmise from these particular stories, we are able, in some instances, to change our habits and behaviors in such a way that it actually produces results. But for real heart change, I'm really not able to rely on my own power. I have to lean in and rely upon the power of the Holy Spirit to transform me into the woman that God has called me to be. As we continue to discuss the role of the Holy Spirit in our lives, I think about the many stories of Peter in the Bible. His journey is such a compelling example of life transformation through the power of the Holy Spirit. You see that Peter could be described in such a way as both a fully devoted follower of Jesus on one hand, and in the same breath, he could be described as a failure. Even when he was following after Jesus with his whole heart, he continued to make mistakes over and over again. You see, Peter was longing to become the person that God called him to be, the rock that Jesus talked about in Matthew 16 and 18, where he said, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." But when Peter continued to rely on his own strength as a means of transformation, he continued to fall short time and time again. You might remember Peter as the disciple who walked on water, but then subsequently sank as he turned his eyes away from Jesus. And then who could forget Peter, who denied knowing Jesus 3 times? I just can't help but to think that in these particular circumstances, Jesus was relying on his own power to do the things that Jesus had called him to do. However, we see that the script was flipped after Jesus' death and resurrection. It's here when we're introduced to a new Peter who is reliant on the power of the Holy Spirit to transform himself and others. In Acts chapter 2, we are witnesses to the disciples being filled with the Holy Spirit. And it's with the power of the Holy Spirit that Peter is able to boldly speak in front of a crowd, which included a lot of religious zealots of the time. And he was able to proudly proclaim that Jesus was the Messiah. It wasn't too far before that he was actually denying that he even knew Jesus. But now he was standing here filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, claiming that Jesus Christ is Lord. That is an amazing transformation. Did you know that as believers, we have this same power living within us today, right now? We can have true and lasting transformation when we rely on the power of the Holy Spirit. When I think about this, I have to actually ask myself a tough question. If I truly believe that I can be transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit, what am I doing right now to fully rely and lean into that power? As we continue to gain a better understanding of how the Holy Spirit interacts in our lives, I encourage you to ask yourself the same question and maybe a few others, like what transformation needs to happen in your life? And who are you relying on to make that transformation happen? And then finally, what would it look like if you shifted your focus from relying on your own power and strength to leaning into the power of the Holy Spirit that lives inside of you? I got to tell you, church, I am excited because I know that when we rely on the power of the Holy Spirit, transformation will occur. I cannot wait to see how that unfolds in my life and unfolds in your life. If you need more examples, just turn to those stories of Peter for the example of transformation that is real and amazing. Thank you for joining me today, church. See you next time.